It's been 6 years now since alternate realities went up to that big back issue bin in the sky. Though much has changed, our community endures. Now, on the brink of a new day, my holiday reunions with the AR gang near their conclusion. This is the LongAR Halloween. Welcome to the LongAR Halloween, a My Comic Shop history tale. I'm your host, Anthony Desiato. This is part 10, Independence Day. And joining me for this installment is former alternate realities customer and one-time webmaster, Caralyn Hylenski. Welcome, Caralyn.
Thank you for having me.
This is the first time you've been on the show in a long time, and the first time that you've been on solo.
Yes. Oh, it's been so long.
It has been a long time. I guess it was back in season 1. I had we did an episode with you, Doug Desher, and Brian O'Day. That was a pretty That was I think that was the rowdiest of the first season and one of the rowdiest of the entire series.
It was good fun. It was definitely good fun.
It was. It's funny because, I just put out the 100th episode of My Comic Shop history, and I went back and I listened to the very beginning of the first episode, and I was very serious. As I did my little intro thing, and as I was questioning Steve, and I think that was appropriate, especially for the beginning. And I was really approaching it with the same mentality that I guess I brought to the documentary. But I've definitely come to have a lot more fun personally. And those earliest episodes, they were fun, but in a different way. It was a little bit more analytical, and I've come to. I like to think bring even more energy to it now, but it was just funny to go back. But yeah, that one in particular, that was a lot of fun, and a little rowdy.
Yeah, it's so much has happened since then too. Yeah. So much change for all of us. The podcast, the documentaries, just everything.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey. And so, I don't want to bury the lead here. And I don't know if you've listened to any of the other ones, but if you haven't, I will share. This did come up in a prior episode, but now that you're here, we can talk about it. You are getting married.
I am getting married.
So congratulations.
Very exciting.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And we won't give out the exact date and location, but October, yes? Yes,
it is October. So looking forward to seeing everyone just after the pandemic. I think it's a good time to get everyone back together again.
Yeah, no, that'll be wonderful. And we got to save the date and are very excited. And it's in the future we could do combo anniversary celebrations because it's a real close. That time in October is perfect. We were happy and have remained happy with that as our anniversary.
Yeah, it's just a good time of the year too. It was also the first Saturday in the fall that we could get, so we grabbed it when we had the chance.
Believe me, I understand. But that's exciting. So it came up because in all these episodes, right? I'm catching up with the guest, and I'm asking everyone, are you keeping in touch with the rest of the gang? All that stuff, and episode after episode, everyone has some level of contact with some number of AR crew members, but there's yet to be someone who's like, yeah, I keep in touch with everyone all the time. Like we don't have that. But your wedding came up because I found out about it through Mike San Gregorio, and I mentioned to Steve
yes.
when we did Steve's episode, I was like, Carolyn's getting married, and he did not know. Now he does.
Yes, now he does. Yeah, it's with the pandemic and everything. It was just hard letting everyone know, what happened over the last 15 or so months. And Mike was like, most of the guys don't know. And I'm like, yeah, I was kind of hoping we would all see each other before, this happened. But surprise.
Yeah. Well, so I have so many questions. And I guess my first one is, can you tell me about what was the proposal like? How did this all go down?
Well, being that it happened in the middle of the pandemic, it was August of last year, and I had just come home after a 7-day stretch at work, and apparently animal hospitals is where it's at during the pandemic. It's been incredibly busy, which is good for, me, job-wise. So I was emotionally and physically exhausted after the 7-day stretch. I get home and he just gets down on one knee and asked.
Very nice. That now, and again, I don't mean to pry. I'm curious about it, and I think back to my own experience, and so that's why I have these questions. Was this something that you both had? Like, was this kind of in the cards? Like, you knew this was going to come at some point, you just didn't know when, or was it like a total shock?
No, we did discuss. We picked, rings out. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. And because he is terrible at keeping secrets, the ring came in that day and he proposed that evening. So.
I'm sure he was too excited to sit on that for long. And I'm sure, especially in the midst of the pandemic where, so many of the things that, you would normally have that you would be able to enjoy together and all that stuff you don't have. So to be able to create a moment like that, it's like, yeah, I can totally understand why he, went for it right away.
Yeah. He also didn't want to set something up like at a restaurant or like you have to wear a mask. And it's like, it was more private. It was more us, like very private. It was super low key. And, that was it.
Fair. That's actually how I did it as well. When I proposed to Steph. So similar with you guys, like it wasn't a shock that I proposed. Like we had talked about it. It wasn't like super specific, but we had spoken about it. We both knew that's where we were headed. So, and the thing is, like, historically, like I do like being able to craft a surprise and have some element of I hate to say trickery, but kind of, because I don't know, I like to create a fun moment. And I was like, okay, so the fact of the proposal, that's not the surprise. So like what could be surprising? And so I figured, okay, the timing of it. And so I ended up proposing a decent bit earlier than I think she was anticipating. And I too did it at home. We had taken the day off. It was a Friday in May. And the cover story was that we were going to go see Avengers. I think it was 2. I think it was Avengers Age of Ultron was out at that point. And so she was getting ready thinking we were going to the movies. And then she came out and I got down on one knee and I proposed. And then I had set up all, like I got us we spent the night at the Ritz in White Plains, and we had dinner at the BLT Steakhouse. Like I had all this stuff that I was like, okay, now like this is what our actual plan is.
Very nice.
So, and she was like, but we're not seeing Avengers? I was like, no. And obviously we saw it eventually, but no, that's really, I was so happy to hear. I'm so happy for you. And,
thank you.
I haven't gotten to know your fiance, Vincent, super well, but I definitely obviously have met him and have chatted with him at numerous AR dinners and everything. And he seems like a great guy.
He is. He's very good to me. It's good to be happy. And I'm very happy.
Yeah, it makes all the difference. And, and especially going back to this pandemic, having company generally, but having company you enjoy makes a big difference.
It is tough. And he works from home. I do have to go to the animal hospital. So it's like, I don't have the alone time. He doesn't really, he kind of gets alone time. So it is tough, but I think for those of us who spend so much time now at home with our significant others, it's like you want to be able to enjoy that time and not be like, get out of my face, I can't do this anymore. And it's like yes, I'm sure as well with you and Steph, it's like, all right, I need some time to myself. But that's when you go out, enjoy like today. I went out, I saw Mike, some of the other guys,
Oh, that's good. What'd you guys do?
We went to I didn't pick anything up, but I want to get back into reading comic books because I do miss it. But that's when I enjoy the time with the book club. I get to read so many stories I've never read before. Some I've reread, which is nice to get back into things. We picked up some donuts and then went to Captain Lawrence.
Very nice. No, I'm glad to hear that. And so the book club, right? So fellow AR refugee Mike San Gregorio for quite some time now. He's been organizing these book clubs, normally in person, but over Zoom during the pandemic. And it's funny because, this is called the LongAR Halloween, longer with an AR, but of course, Batman the Long Halloween was the inspiration for it. And after Brian O'Day's episode, I've had to start just kind of reminding the guests for this podcast that this is just like a cheeky reference to the Long Halloween. You're not actually expected to come on having read Batman the Long Halloween, because it was the funniest thing. I got to the end of that St. Patrick's Day episode with Brian, and he was like, "Oh, I guess we're not talking about the Long Halloween." He's like, "I thought that's what I was supposed to read." I was like, "No." But so that was actually one of your most recent book club selections, right?
Yes, it was the last book club, the last book we read, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was a great book.
You had never read it before.
I have never read it before.
Okay.
So it was a good read. I enjoyed the art. I enjoyed the storyline.
All right, that's good. I'm glad. I loved it at the time, but I have not gone back in many, many years, and I will at some point. But I've gone back and I've, taken another look at some of Jeff Loeb's other work, and some of it's held up better than others. I'm a little, I don't know what my reaction will be to Long Halloween after all this time, but I'm glad you liked it. I know they're doing a 2-part animated adaptation. I think
I saw something about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that I'm excited for that. Now, have you read, or are you going to read the follow-up Dark Victory?
They discussed it about those books. I may or may not. Somehow we got talking about like Spider-Man Blue and some of those other Marvel books, which now I want to reread Spider-Man Blue because I do have that. I don't know. I may or may not pick it up, just to read it and see where else the story went.
Gotcha. I have to say Spider-Man Blue is my favorite Spider-Man story. And I read it recently for a book club podcast episode, and it held up great. I think with Loeb, because it's funny, over the course of the book club podcast that I did and the Superman podcast I'm doing, I've like gone back and looked at a lot of Loeb stuff, within the past few months. And I feel like, especially with the works that I've looked at, like where he excels is where he's able to really get at the heart of the character and really show their humanity. And that's what I think he can do very well. I don't know that he's such a great mystery writer. So that's where I feel like Hush and maybe Long Halloween upon reread, might not quite hold up. But yeah, something like Spider-Man Blue just is so much heart. I love it.
Yeah, from what I remember, I loved the book. So it's digging it out of my parents' house to reread it. But I remember the art. Like, that was the one thing I loved about the Long Halloween, the artwork. I loved the artwork to it.
Yeah. And I mean, Loeb and Sale are such an amazing team. They really, I think, bring out the best in each other. So no, that's cool. I'm glad you enjoyed that. And so, speaking of Mike, so Mike is, what is the term for his role in your wedding? Man of honor?
He is the man of honor. Yes.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yes. And he's enjoying himself. He is, doing everything he possibly can do. He's been so great with everything. I just appreciate him so much.
No, that's really cool. I love that. And who will be officiating the ceremony?
So I met this couple through my friend Allison, who they are a school psychologist and a teacher, and they're married, and he does weddings on the side. So I'm like, this is perfect. That's awesome. If that didn't work out, you always have Drew Cheskin as backup. This is true. I could have asked Drew. No, I love that it's, you have that connection to them, because honestly, that's, one of the aspects of our wedding that I'm so glad we had Drew do it. It made it so much more personal that it was someone we knew. And 100%. Yeah. And like for us in particular, like, we're not religious, so we weren't going to go down that route. And then if it was a matter of, and I know, and again, plenty of people just hire a minister, and that's perfectly fine. But I was like, yeah, if we can have someone do it who knows us. So that's really cool. And at least, Drew is there on standby in case anything goes awry. Yeah, no, I knew I wanted them because it's so, like you said, it's so much more personal to have people and you're friends with. It's like we've made, like, everyone we've met so far for the wedding, they've been amazing people. It's been just, it's making the process so much easier. and less stressful, because who needs more stress during a pandemic?
Yeah, I don't envy you, trying to plan a wedding in the midst of all of this. It's like doing anything in the midst of this is not tough. I mean, we moved, a year ago in the midst of this at the height of everything. And that was, no picnic. So I can imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine not. I'm not a fan of moving. I can't imagine moving during a pandemic being much easier.
Yeah, it's so funny with the moving. Steph and I joke about this because, she's moved a good number of times over the years. But for myself, it's like my parents and I moved from the first apartment that I lived in to our house, when I was 8. And I stayed there until I was 25 then. But then over these past few years, it's like I moved to my apartment and then in with Steph and then now to our current place. So when you tally it up, it's really not that much in my 34 years, but it's like most of these moves have happened like within the past few years. So I feel like I've moved a lot and I'm happy to not do that for quite some time.
Yes, that is a good thing. We are trying to find a house, but this is not the time to really find a house. But the one good thing that I take out of moving is purging things. I was like, oh, I forgot I had this. Guess I don't need it anymore. So I tend to lose a lot of things when I move because, but then you buy everything again. It's just, you start all over again.
It's true. But to your point, I think there can be something cathartic, right, about having that purge. Where are you looking, in Westchester or elsewhere? Where are you looking?
Upper Westchester to Putnam.
Okay.
Just because Westchester is so expensive, but right now everything is so expensive.
Yeah, you're not. So we actually we lucked out on that front because we bought our place before all of this happened. Then we did some work on it before we moved in. So that's why we ended up moving in later in the pandemic. But we thankfully, the price was set before because then, because then we were hearing that there was this mass exodus from Manhattan and that, everyone was looking in Westchester and the Connecticut area. Yep. So, yeah.
Yep. We're still dealing with that, but just the cost of housing is ridiculous. But you know what? We have a home. I'm happy where we are, If it takes a little bit longer, that's okay.
Yeah. So are you is it an apartment that you're in now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Same as us. And we were in a 1-bedroom and, when it was just us, it was fine. Once Milo came along, then it was okay, we need to expand. We moved at exactly the right time because it was right as we were moving that he was starting to walk. So for the time that we were in the apartment, he was contained and it was fine. But, now it's it's a good thing we had the extra room for him to run around. But no, the prices are nuts. Even before the pandemic, it was not cheap at all. Because we looked, honestly, we looked for years.
We're on that now. We've been looking, I think, at least a year and a half, if not 2 years at this point. We've been trying to find something. And it's just, there's nothing, or it's a house that needs to be gutted for too much money, or it's a house that's move-in ready that's for far too much money.
Yep. That's 100% what we found and it was, it was just shocking to see the condition of some of these places and the price that they were asking. It was very, very tough to reconcile that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also, no, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. We've seen too many of those. We just saw a house this past weekend. It looked nice in the pictures. And then we walked in the house and we're like, this needs to be gutted. This needs $100,000 worth of work.
Yeah, no, exactly. It and we also ran into a number of really screwy layouts. And I'm not an architect, but some of these things I'm like, what was going on here? There was one, I can't remember if I ever mentioned this on a podcast. I don't know that I would have. There was one place we looked at, and I can't remember if it was a house or a townhouse or where it was, because we looked so many places, but the master bathroom was, and I'm not exaggerating here, it was so spacious. It was so vast that there had to have been sex parties. I just don't think that there's any other explanation for why there would be a bathroom as large. And I don't have dimensions for it, but it was, it's not like, oh, like it was kind of large for a bathroom. I mean, it was staggeringly large for a bathroom. So much so that I hope they were having sex parties, because otherwise it's like, what are you doing with all that bathroom? We passed on that one.
I think we would too. Yeah, some of these houses are very bizarre. Or you have the houses where it looks perfect, and then you're in the basement, and then, oh, they have a laundry room that you have to get to through a bathroom.
Yes.
There's been many of those, and I said, I don't want to go through a bathroom to get to our laundry room.
Yeah, I wish you lots of luck with the search, because I know from firsthand experience how hard it is. But thankfully, I mean, like, if you're not in a position where you have to move, that gives you some flexibility, and you can be patient and you can wait. And at the same time, though, I think the fact that we looked so long, it was very educational.
It is.
Right?
It is very much educational.
Yeah, and it's like, I feel like it's educational generally about the market, but it's also, I think you gain insight about yourself and you guys as a couple as far as what's important to you. Because I think that over all that time of us looking at places, like you then get a lot better and quicker, I think, at eliminating something, and the stuff that you're willing to sacrifice on.
Yes.
Like I knew for me, I mean, I don't want to say like this was such a deal breaker, but paramount for me was some kind of office space to do stuff like this, and I knew, because there were plenty of places where it was like, well, we'd have a bedroom and we'd have a room for the kid, and that's it, so like when we found this place, and it's half office, half laundry room, but it's all good.
See, that's not so bad. Yeah, no, our deal is he'll get the basement so he can have a movie room. Okay. And I just want an extra bedroom for myself. I have my office, my art room, my space, so I can close the door.
I was going to ask what was so because I know your husband to be, so he's into the audio visual presentation, right? So he wants like a screen, like a proper screening room.
He'd love that. That's, so when we find a house, we go into the basement, we make sure, all right, can we put up, a big TV or a screen? It's like, all right, you can have the basement, you can have your movie room, your game room. I just want my own room so I can, have my own space.
I like that. And I identify with that. I mean, I think if we had been able to have another room, that's probably what I would have gone for. What I ended up, this wasn't really a requirement because I was planning to just get a gym membership. But then with the pandemic, I ended up, this was real. It was super hard to actually get gym equipment. And it was really hard to get gym equipment that would allow enough room to still park the car in the garage. But I did it.
Okay.
I did it.
There you go.
And so again, that wasn't something so much that was on my mind when we were looking, but as it turned out, having the home gym, that was ended up being really key as well. If I had another room to play with, screening room for sure.
That's he wants that. We actually, I mean, you can't see it, but there is a arcade machine on the far side of our living room that I helped put together early on in our relationship. So he'll have a space for that, his movies, and it'll be nice if we're able to get that.
Yeah.
But it'll come in due time.
Yeah. Again, my unsolicited advice is, be patient. Again, like it took us a long time. I know, again, Mike, I know they looked for a long time too. I mean, it's just in this area in particular, and fellow AR refugee, Bill Mayo and I, we've discussed this many times. It's like, you really pay for the privilege of living so close to Manhattan. And because he and I joke about this all the time, because he's been living out in New Mexico. And it's like, and that's the thing too. And even just traveling generally, it's like you see it, like a dollar goes a lot further other places.
Oh yeah.
So there's that aspect, but no, that's really cool. And I wish you luck. And on the off chance I hear of anything, I'll be sure to send it your way.
Let me know, because we're looking on and off. But, it's also being where we are. It's nice being close to a train station, because, with me being back in school, commuting into the city back and forth, that's also very important.
Yes. So that's a perfect, I want to take a real quick commercial break, and then I want to come back and I want to talk about what you've been doing on the school front. So we will be right back. If you enjoy this show, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. I also hope you'll consider joining my Patreon community. The support of my patrons enables me to produce this podcast, and patrons get rewards too, including exclusive episodes, advanced listens, and more. Sign up today and get instant access to the back catalog. Visit patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. Thank you to all of my patrons. I truly appreciate your support. The Hive Comics and Games is an oasis of nerd fun and events in the heart of Odessa, Texas. Whether it's comic book superhero stories or role-playing in a dungeon, the Hive is where to be. Come tap your mana and face off against the top Magic the Gathering players in West Texas. Hive carries a majority of new comic titles each Wednesday, and has all of your favorite titles in their back issue section. Follow them on Facebook at The Hive Comics and on Instagram at The Hive Comic Shop. Film lovers and filmmakers should check out this family of film festivals: Brightside Tavern in Jersey City, Hang On to Your Shorts in Asbury Park, Point Lookout on Long Island, and In the Cut in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Submission information for filmmakers, as well as details about the festivals generally, can be found at filmfreeway.com. Also, be sure to listen to the Hang On to Your Shorts and Cullen on Film podcasts, available via a shared universe network. All right, and we are back with Caralyn, and I just want to thank our sponsors and all of my patrons as well. I really do appreciate it. So yeah, Caralyn. So what is your current status? Because I can't remember the last time I spoke with you. It's been a while. But you're currently what's the program that you're currently enrolled in?
So I am back at John Jay. And my master's program is forensic mental health counseling. So I've always had the interest of, forensic psychology, and that's where my, bachelor's degree is in. And granted, I graduated back in 2008, took a very long break before going back. But when I did decide to go back, it was just the right time. I was in a much better place, in my life with friends and family and Vince. I had to take the GRE a few times before I got the score. But I think I'm 2 years in. I have 2 years left. And it's an exciting road. It's a part of the journey of my life that I'm glad I took. It's been rough because, I'm so much older than a lot of the students. But as many of my professors have told me, I have the life experience that a lot of them don't have, which does give me a boost, does make me feel a bit better. But yeah, it's tough, but I'm glad I made the decision, to go back to school.
Yeah. Really, kudos for doing that. I think that's awesome. And no, I really admire it because I went straight from high school to college to law school. I didn't have a break. And, now in my capacity, in law school admissions, it's like I work with a lot of what we call nonlinear or non-traditional students. And it's like, yeah, I can imagine that it's just like a different mentality, a different mindset, right? When you've been out in the world and then coming back and being in a classroom setting again, I'm sure it takes a minute to acclimate to that again.
Oh, it was definitely hard. And then to be back in school and then the pandemic hit. During the 2 classes I'd rather not take online, it was like statistics and research. And I was like, well, I don't really want to take this on a Zoom class, but I had no choice. I had to do it. But the professors have been great. They've just been so understanding with everything going on. And, like I said, I have the support, from everyone where I'm just like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can do this. And then, I get through it. And then, I get those A's, which I'm very proud of because sitting in a room full of people almost 20 years younger than I am. And, they just went straight from like high school to college. It's like it feels like I'm going up against them because they have some knowledge I don't have because so much has changed since I was in school. But it's so great to gain this knowledge and just to learn more and know I'm taking the steps, to better myself and get to where I want to be.
I love that. And, it's funny because I say this because it's not uncommon for one of those nonlinear students to express some misgivings about, and again, when I say nonlinear, I mean, we have some people who are a few years out of undergrad, but we literally have people decades out of undergrad. And this is a second or maybe even third career, or maybe it's something that they just kind of always had on their bucket list and they just want to do it. And, they've expressed occasionally like some misgivings about it. And the thing I always say, and I mean this genuinely, like I'm not just selling in my capacity as an admissions officer. It's like, I genuinely think, and you can tell me, I think that, when you have had that life experience, that work experience, you've had some time in between. Yes, it might be a little harder to get back into the school mode, but I think you get more out of it. And I think you appreciate it more than maybe I did when, for me, it was like, okay, this is the next stage of my schooling. It was just like, okay, like this is the next thing, like let's get into it. But I think when you have that time, I do think you can appreciate it more.
I do agree with you for sure. Like I was talking to one of my professors about a midterm because I think I got like a 95 on the midterm, but I was like, I want to know what I did wrong. And he goes, you did really well. He's like, you didn't really need to talk to me about this, but I'm glad you reached out. And, I told him, it's like, look, I've been out of school for so long. And he was telling me how he has a student who's 25. She just got her doctorate degree, but she has no life experience. And that's what he stressed on me. And that really stuck with me. It was from this past semester. He's like, you have an experience some of these students don't have. Like I've been out there. It's like I see what happens. It's not just in education. I'm not just sitting in a classroom for however many hours a day and then just, all right, do this, do this, do this. Like, if this is the next step, I got to take it. For me, it was like, all right, I went to community college, then, I took a year off, then I went back to school, then I graduated. And then I was like, what do I do now? And then I think it was almost 12 years. And I was like, well, I guess I'm taking the next step now, to go back to school. But that just really stuck with me. And other professors have said the same thing. It's like, you have something, a lot of these kids, and they are kids, like they're 18, 19 years old. And, I'm so much older than them, but then I've been in the world, I have experience and.
Yeah, it's funny because I, again, not in that particular setting, but I recently briefly had a Flat Squirrel Productions intern. My mom works at Edgemont High School, and they're like all the seniors have to do an internship project before they graduate. And there was actually someone else who did an internship with me a few years ago when I first started the podcast. Actually, it was 2015. And then there was someone else who wanted to do something, and he was into comics, and I was like, sure. And he helped me. He did a bunch of editing, like he, created clips, and he did some research for me and stuff like that. It was great, very helpful. But it was funny, like when I was talking to him, and I was explaining about what I do on the podcasting front and all that. But then we were talking about Superman and comics and movies and everything, and in particular, we were talking about Superman the animated series, which debuted in 96, 97, like around there. And, like I had to stop myself, and I was like, oh, you weren't even born yet. So, it's like, I really had to check myself, and like to a similar extent with law school, not so much. Cause everyone I'm dealing with is at least 22, and a lot of times they are older than that. But even still, it's like, I'm approaching mid-30s. So it's like, if I'm talking to someone in their early 20s, it's like, yeah, there's a little bit of a divide there as far as references and things like that.
Yeah, especially one of the girls in my class brought up the Jean Benet case. And I'm like, I was alive when that happened. I don't think you were. I'm like, I lived that. Or like some of these other cases, like BTK. I remember seeing the newspaper articles in the supermarkets when he was caught. And I'm like, you probably weren't alive when that happened.
Yeah, no, I identify with that. And the other example that comes to my mind is, we have student workers, and I was talking to her about The Office, And, like I watched The Office live when it originally aired. And it's like she just binged it on Netflix. And it's like, thankfully, again, we both saw the show. So we had the same, frame of reference. But, the way we came to it, was very different.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I give you a lot of credit for that. So, I mean, you're in school, you're planning a wedding, you're working at the animal hospital, you're looking for a new place to live, all that stuff. We got to do some alternate realities talk here because that's, ultimately,
Sure.
I think what the people want. I think they enjoy the general life catch-ups as well, though. I choose to believe that. And even if they don't, I do, so it's all right. But no, so I want to talk about alternate realities a little bit. So as far as, again, keeping in touch, I mean, is the book club... I know, again, Mike, obviously, you're very close with, but as far as the larger group, is the book club the main way you're keeping in touch, or are you keeping in touch other ways too?
It is the main way. So I do see a bunch of the guys, which is nice. When we were seeing everybody in person, it was much nicer. And of course, when the pandemic first hit, there was a long stretch of time before we picked it up again through the Zoom calls. But actually, Doug and Marie, I do get to speak to every so often because they bring their dog to the animal hospital. So it is nice that I do get to speak with them a little bit more. So I think they were actually the first ones to know, about the engagement because I saw Marie right away. But yeah, that is the main way I do keep in touch with everyone. I can't wait until we can start doing book club in person again to see people in person. It'd be nice to pick up the dinners too. I miss having the dinners with everyone. Whether it's Mickey Splains or somewhere else, I miss all of that.
As do I. I mean, I think, as we're recording this at the very end of June for our Independence Day episode, I think we're very close to the point where we could, I think, safely, even if it's an outdoor, I was kind of thinking of like an outdoor meetup. Whether we, went to a place where there's a food truck or we brought food or we literally just met at a park,
I'd be fine with that.
Well, it's funny, I didn't think about this ahead of time, but part of our, like the dinner routine, right? As you well know, we would, back in the day, of course, would start at the store and then we would all, have this caravan over to the restaurant. But then the other piece of it was always at the end, after the dinner, after we went outside and we went first, it was usually happened twice. First, like outside the restaurant, the circle forms.
Yep.
And we BS for a few more minutes and then it's like, okay, let's go. And then we walk to the parking lot and then the circle reforms.
And then we would talk a little bit more.
So I don't know, because it's funny. I was trying to think of like where would be a good place where there's a food truck, like where, and I'm like, maybe we just stand in a parking lot in a circle. Maybe that's the answer.
The good old days.
I think we'd all be perfectly happy to do that, especially after
probably.
The past year. I mean, I feel like that would be fine. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Do you have anything special planned for 4th of July? Anything fun?
We're going up to one of his friends. He has a deck, which we've been going to the last couple of years, and we just have a barbecue and we just chat and hang out. And it's nice to just be with people. Yes,
indeed. Definitely. You certainly appreciate that in a new way after all of this. I mentioned at the top about your brief tenure, or I don't know how brief it was, as AR webmaster, web designer. What would you call it?
It was pretty brief, I guess. I don't know. I guess webmaster, quote unquote. I did start it, and then Steve just never really gave me anything to put on it, so it just kind of died out after a little bit.
Oh, because all right. Would you happen to remember like what year we're talking here?
Oh my goodness. I've known you guys probably close to 15 years. I was 18 when I started going out to dinner with everyone. I remember that. It had to have been a couple of years after that.
Because I remember, it's funny. I think I got the timeline a little mixed up because I remember the summer of 2007. Steve put his Odoisms on the website and we had some new photos, but I think that was we had a worker there named Morgan.
Yes.
And I think that was
she
her
did a
work.
website after me I think that was after that.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I mean, any memories from your time as a webmaster?
Unfortunately, that was so long ago. I mean, I was up for it. I wanted to do it, and then it just kind of just fiddled and just disappeared.
I mean, Steve himself has admitted like the retail thing, might not have been the right fit for him, because it's just so funny. It's like, we didn't, and maybe at some points there were some things for sale. I can't remember. Not that you could actually buy it through the website, but I think there were photos of things and it was like, hey, come to the store and we have this. But the fact that like a good chunk of the website was devoted to his, personal ideology, his manifesto, it's like
the Odoisms.
I'm sure it was like personally fulfilling for him, but I don't know that the website served the function that maybe it needed to. But now he's an eBay whiz, so he made up for it.
This is true.
Yeah. Did you ever see the warehouse in person?
I have. I've seen it a couple of times. I haven't seen it recently, but I know he did empty out some, and he doesn't have as many units as he did. But I was there, I think once or twice. I was there.
Yeah, he still has the 2 units or rooms as he calls them, and but he cleared out a lot. The main one with the comics and everything like that looks very different now than it did, even a few months ago, and certainly different than it looked in the latest documentary where we showed it, where it really looked like the store like transplanted there.
It was just the store.
Yeah, basically. But so you started going out to dinner when you were 18. When did you start shopping at the store, though? Was it shortly before, or had you been shopping there a while?
It was shortly before that.
How'd you find the shop? How'd you end up there?
I think my dad had picked something up for my sister and I, and then I got my driver's license not too long after that. So then I started to drive myself to the store because it was really the only place to get anime that was subtitled, because that's when Steve had the subtitled anime. So I used to purchase that from him. And then I just started to get into the comic books. I think that's when the first Spider-Man movie came out. So that's when I started to really want to look into the comic books. And then I somehow became a part of the group, and, I got invited out to the dinners, and here we are.
Yeah, no, and I'm not going to ask, what was it like being the lone female member of our group? Because I think that's, kind of a basic question. It is interesting. So what I was thinking about, though, is that, and, we've talked about this before. I mean, obviously, many of us have brought our wives or girlfriends, to the dinners and things like that. But among, like, the base group, you long have been the sole female representative. But what's interesting is that, it's like now I've gone to, a lot of comic shops out there, and it really does seem like there is a lot more variety and diversity in terms of who's coming into the shop and who's reading. Because, the other thing I was thinking of, going back to that first podcast that you did, I think Brian made a joke at the beginning when I introduced you of like, the token female. And I know what he meant, but I mean, token, my sense of the word is that would seem to imply there were other women to choose from. And I just I had one woman on the podcast just to say like, hey, look, there's a woman represented. And that wasn't the case. I mean, among our customer base, and certainly the group that went out to dinner, but even among the customers generally, I mean, you weren't the only one, but I mean, it was a really small group.
Yeah, I think back then, I do remember some, women, but not many. It's great that it's expanded so much since then. Mike and I do joke that I'm the token female. As you all know, I don't take that personally. I think it's funny because Vince and I were on YouTube, and actually the original documentary popped up. So we started watching it because he's actually never seen it before. And it was just to watch how young we all were, and just seeing everyone again. And then, watching it, it's like, wow, I really was the only girl who went out to dinner with everyone. And, not that it makes me feel special or anything. It's like, I feel a part of you guys. Like I never felt different from any of you. None of you ever treated me differently. It's like, I was a friend. I was a part of the group. And just because I was the only female, it didn't make anything different, which is, I think, why our group is the way it is. It's like nobody made anybody feel different. And everyone was, so accepting of each other. I knew all of you had my back if something was to happen. But other than that, I felt like one of you guys. I never felt different.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you felt that way. And, yeah, I mean, it's something that I've thought about more, obviously I think this is something that's on people's minds in a way that it wasn't in the past. And especially going to more stores now and in other parts of the country and like really getting a sense. And you see that there's been a shift and that's great because it's like comics are for everyone. And then of course, though, there's the aspect of, the welcoming atmosphere. And I really, from all the time I was behind the counter and anyone I ever observed at our shop behind the counter, it's like I would stand by the statement. I don't think, and I would hate to think, right, that any the female customer might have come in and ever felt uncomfortable. They might have been like, this store's a mess, but we felt that way too. but
that's very true.
but at least just as far as, because again, I know there are women who have gone to shops and have been creeped out and not had a good experience. And thankfully, like I don't think that was ever the vibe at our shop. I think it was just kind of more of like they're just there weren't as many women who came through the doors,
back then for sure.
And if Kara ever listens to this, we had other, again, there were, female customers, but again, if you were really doing a statistical analysis here, it was minimal among the larger, but very few kids too. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like I think that our clientele for the most part ran pretty traditional to what you think of like a comic, like an old school, like typical comic shop clientele. Like it was primarily, white adult men, mostly.
Yes. But I mean, from my point of view, I never felt
right.
Different. I walked in, it's like, all right, I know where I want to go. I know what I'm looking for. Like I said, none of you, made me feel any different. You were like, oh, what are you going to get? And then Steve was like, hey, do you want, me to put comic books aside for you? I was like, sure.
That's right. What was your number again?
It was 118.
118. And so again, just going back to like the comic side of this. So is Spider-Man still a favorite character?
Still a favorite character. Unfortunately, I did fall out of reading comic books. I'd like to get back into it. So that's again where the book club comes back into play because I get to read stuff I've never read before. So it's just getting back into it slowly, seeing what's out there, what I can read, just to get back into my, old interests. Because I definitely dove right back into watching anime, which is a big, big part of my life again after, that blip of time span in my life where I fell out of everything. I got back into that. Now I'd really like to get back into the comic book reading.
Yeah, I mean, that would be great. So like you said, it's the book club primarily. That's what you're reading for. Now, but did you stop like buying and collecting and reading regularly even before AR closed? Or were you still getting stuff at that point?
I think here or there, but not as much.
Right.
I think the last thing I purchased right when the store was basically empty was a Daredevil book. I can't remember which one, but Steve had ordered it for me and it was still just sitting in the box. And I think it was the last day that everyone was packing everything up. I was finally able to come and help. And the book was there and I was like, I will buy that book still. And that was the last book I bought from Steve.
I don't, actually, no, I do. So the last thing I got from the store was, well, the last two things actually were gifts. He at the Last Supper, the big dinner, Steve gave me that Superman neon sign, which doesn't work, but that felt so on brand for alternate realities. Like, I don't know if you're a Conan O'Brien fan, but he very recently, he just signed off from his TBS show and he's going to come back in the future with like a weekly variety show on HBO Max, but he had like the end of his TBS show, which ran for 10 or 11 years. And Jack Black was his final guest. And they during the interview, they were talking about how they had this whole like stunt planned, like a physical stunt for Jack Black to do. And during the rehearsal, he sprained his ankle. And so he couldn't do it. So he just came out and he sat there and he had the cast around his ankle. But Conan was like, you know what? This is like perfect for us. This is like 100% on brand for Conan O'Brien and the show. And that's kind of how I feel about the neon sign that didn't work. It's like, all right. It was the thought that counted. It felt so fitting. And then the other thing before that was there was a Rocky action figure that came out. And this is so funny. So, we've often talked on this podcast about the season 1 finale of My Comic Shop History when it was me, Steve, and Bill. And we recorded the finale as the store was mostly emptied out and was late at night and it was very emotional, all that stuff. But before we recorded, I went into the back room on the steel shelves where the reserve, if there were items that didn't fit in the filing cabinet, they would go on those steel shelves in the back. And so I saw this Rocky figure that I had not asked for and I had not ordered, and it had a price tag and my name on it. I'm like, what the hell is this? I was like, I think Steve expects me to buy this, but all right. And then after we were done recording, he went back there and he brought it out. He's like, oh, I got this for you. Here you go. It was very, very nice and very great. And I really do treasure that. But yeah, so those were my last 2 items from the store. Yeah. Good times. But
very much.
Yeah.
I miss those times.
Yeah, I know. I mean, is there anything in particular that you missed the most? I don't know, because I know the store was a part of all of our routines, but maybe in different ways, like whether, some of us were there, like clockwork on Wednesdays or came in for those Saturday gatherings or just came in like other random days of the week. How did it kind of fit into your routine the most?
I would always come up a little bit before closing on Saturdays to, go out to dinner with everyone. And then, when I had the chance, I would come and try to hang out for a little bit during the week. But yeah, I just miss the Saturdays. I miss the Saturdays where, all of us would just be at the store before we would, go to dinner.
Yeah, those were great times for sure. And so I know you said that you went, to Oh Yeah, just to kind of hang out with some of the guys. But so, I mean, obviously you don't have a regular go-to shop at the moment.
No, I don't. If I do start picking up books again, it'll probably be, stop at Oh Yeah, for maybe things, because I don't know of many other ones. There aren't many that I know of, in our area. What is it? Spider's Den? I think they're in Yonkers. Spider's Web. I know of them. But yeah, otherwise it's just online, looking at stuff online. Though I do prefer, whether it's a novel or a comic book, I prefer having the physical book in my hand. Because there's just something about feeling the pages and the smell of it. I like that. It's almost like reminiscing about the past.
Yeah, I don't dispute that. As much as I have become a proponent of digital, it's there's something about that tangible experience of holding the book for sure. I'm sure that the old school collectors and any comics retailer who's listening to this will appreciate that sentiment. So as far as getting back into comics, what's the main roadblock for you at the moment? Is it, I just don't know if I'm going to have time. I got to, work it into the budget. I don't know where to start. what's the biggest hindrance?
I mean, it's probably a little bit of everything. I mean, time wise is a big thing, especially with being back in school and, I have to devote what little time I have, working at my job to read. I can't even read a novel. I carry a novel with me to work every day to read. And I go on my lunch break and I'm just so exhausted that I just look at my phone instead. But it's mostly time, it's just finding that time out of, adult life, because when I'm not working, 40 odd hours a week, it's all right. When am I off? Okay. What am I doing on my day off? I now have to be an adult on my day off and, do food shopping, run errands, clean the apartment, take care of my cats. It's finding that time for myself, which I should look for it a little harder than I do. And then knowing what to read. I mean, thankfully I have friends who read and I can, ask them or, go back and, It's like, well, what did I want to read back in the past? And maybe I can look for that and pick that up and, pick up from there.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, and that all makes sense. Do you think you would do single issues or trades? Or, I mean, I'm sure probably a mix, but like primarily, what do you think you would do?
Probably trades.
Yeah.
At this point, especially since I'd like to read stuff that has already been out. It's also much nicer to read a story in full, rather than in bits and pieces.
Yeah, for sure. I identify with a lot of this because, as a little experiment for myself and the podcast back in season 2, I got a pull list at Spider's Web for the first time in years. Because even before AR closed, like was just reading in trade. And then even that, I kind of fell off for a while. And so this was around the time of DC Rebirth. And I was like, okay, like, let me try this again. It's a different store, but run by one of our former customers. I'll feel comfortable there. And I was like, let me see what it would be like again to have a weekly pull list. And, the experience at Spider's Web was great. And I would recommend that store to anyone. But it just, and honestly, I think it had less to do with the shop experience and more to do with the comics themselves. Like it just, as much as I liked the DC Rebirth era overall, it just, I don't know, I wasn't able to recapture the experience that I used to have of like really being excited to go to the shop every Wednesday and get my books. I just couldn't do it. And it was disappointing because I was like, I wanted that. Like I really wanted to have that again. But then it's like, it's funny. I think, and hopefully you'll get it right back. I hope that you do. But it's like, even if you don't, and maybe maybe you already have the answer in book club. Cause like for me, doing the book club podcast that I did, but even more than that, doing the Superman show, I can't tell you, it's reinvigorated my fandom and my joy, the joy that I get from reading comics or watching the adaptations in a way that I've not experienced before, because I've not had that, this specific experience of like, okay, I'm going to chronicle my fandom on a podcast and I'm like reading and watching this stuff in a different way. So I found the joy, but just in a different way.
Yeah. And what you just said, I agree with like so much, because that's how it is with the book club. Like, it's like, all right, we're going to read this and this. And I'm like, this is great. I've never read this before. I don't know what it's about. And you get to talk about it with so many different people. It's like, not just, those of us from AR, but other people who are friends with everyone else. And you get their point of view, and you get to talk about how you feel about it. And everyone is accepting of it, and they appreciate your point of view, and you get to hear their point of view. And for me to sit in on these chats with people who've been reading comic books for decades, it's entertaining also, because I'm getting to learn what they read, and they're comparing it to what they used to read, what used to be printed. And it's just so interesting. And Vince, who doesn't really read books at all, like he'll listen in on it and he'll find it interesting at times as well. And I love that. I love getting that, because it is so much fun.
I love to hear that. And so I'm glad you have that. And, so even if you're not able to necessarily replicate the traditional experience that you had of, going to the shop and getting, whether it's singles or trades, the fact that you have that is awesome. So as a Spider-Man fan, and I guess you got into Spider-Man well after this, but does the Clone Saga hold any particular meaning for you?
I still need to read it. I should read it because I read so much about it. But being that my email address is still the same as Ricochet Spidey, it does hold a special place in my heart, even though I've never read it. It's at my fingertips. I just have not physically read it yet.
So, well, in your defense, so Ricochet was part of the Identity Crisis storyline. That was like a little bit after, so that wasn't like in the Clone Saga. So you're safe on that front. But I bring that up, A, because I love the Clone Saga, but B, they're bringing back Ben Reilly.
Are they?
They just announced this, and they posted some promo art. There's this Spider-Man Beyond event that's starting in the next few months, and I don't know much about it other than from the art and what little they've revealed. It appears that Ben will be back as Spider-Man well, I'm sure that won't last forever, and none of these things do. But if you're looking, again, I know you don't have that particular affinity for Ben Reilly, but I don't know if the stories are good. It might make you want to go back and finally read the original Clone Saga. Although when you're like, I need to read it, I don't know if I would say need. That might be a little generous, but there is a certain charm to it, I think.
No, Ben Reilly was an interesting character. I should just read all of that, all those back issues. But that is a good place to start. I do appreciate that little tidbit.
Yeah, I mean, that's a place to go. And I mean, I'm assuming then you probably skipped most, if not all, of like Brand New Day and all of that, or maybe you were there for a little bit of it.
I think maybe for a little bit of it.
Okay. Because I mean, that's, and I only read the very beginning, but I mean, that's years and years worth at this point. So there's, you definitely have some like decent jumping on points if you're looking.
I have quite a history to go back to. I do know I want to read up on the Gwen Stacy, Spider Gwen. I do want to read that. I know there's places I can start. It's just actually doing it is my problem.
Yeah, and then so I know. So when you were reading, was it primarily Marvel? Did you do some DC stuff?
It was primarily Marvel, but I did read Hellboy, and one other title, which I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was mainly Marvel.
Gotcha. Yeah, because while I'm not the biggest fan of DC right now, generally, historically there's obviously there's a lot there, and it is home to my favorite character. And just on the independent side, there's so much great stuff out there.
I definitely want to read Saga. I started reading Saga. I want to get back into that because that was a wonderful story. The artwork, everything it was gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, anything Brian K. Vaughan, for the book club podcast, I just did Ex Machina, the Wildstorm series. If you have any interest in political stuff, it's so good. And if not, I mean, there's always Why the Last Man, which remains one of my all-time favorites. So there's and the nice thing with the independent or the creator-owned stuff is that you don't, in most cases, except stuff that's like so long running, they're usually, it's less to digest, and you don't have to deal with crossovers and all kinds of stuff. It's like you can just get a set of trades, like Y is collected in 5 thick trades, you're good to go.
Yeah, the crossover events were never fun. It's like, oh, I don't read this title, but now I have to pick up this one book. I don't read that one either, but I guess I have to pick that up as well. They
get you. They always get you.
Yes, I have a few long boxes sitting in my old room in my parents' house.
Yeah, no, I get that. And then so with the book club, have you had the opportunity yet to pick the reading selection? And if so, what did you pick?
Not yet. I really want to pick a Hellboy book, but I have to figure out which Hellboy book, because I know it's not everyone is interested in reading it. But I just find the character, very entertaining, and I loved all the books that I have and all the single issues I picked up. So it's just trying to figure out which book, and then, maybe finding a companion story to read with it.
Not that I want to speak for him, but I can all but guarantee if you pick Hellboy, Rich Roney will not read it. Rich Roney will talk about what he's heard about it and the fact that he knows it was a thing. And there might be something about the cover that he finds striking, and he'll talk about that. And that'll probably be it.
I'd like to think for me, he'd read it, but I don't know.
I don't think so. But it's not personal. It's not personal. I
know.
Although, well, in fair, you know what? I'll walk that back a little bit, because I know you guys did do Planetary, right?
I don't think I was able to join on that one, but I think they did read it.
All right. And that was a little out of his wheelhouse. So, maybe, but I would be very skeptical. He's very set in what he said it himself. He's so hardwired for the traditional superhero stuff. As much as it's funny, over all these years, all the books, I was just going on about why, and it's all the stuff that we've all recommended to him. I remember we tried like a number of us tried to get him into Fables, because I felt like out of everything, not that that's superheroes, but it just, I don't know, I felt like there would have been a seamless enough like transition where he could get into that, you know, like with the whole universe of characters they built out, but he didn't, he wouldn't go for it.
Oh, Rich. But we'll see. Maybe I'll look back in my comic book collection and recommend something else that's not Hellboy.
Yeah. But, well, that's cool. Well, listen, I hope you continue enjoying book club. I hope that, you know, if and when you get back into reading regularly, that it's a good experience and that you get out of it what you want. I guess that's the most important thing.
Yes. And right now with book club, I absolutely am. I'm just like, guys, what are you recommending? I will get it. I will pick it up. I will read it. I'll probably reread it, you know, when I don't have to worry about talking about it. And I can just take my time and just sit and read it a little at a time. Because I usually wind up just having a chunk of time and I just speed read through everything. And I just take notes and, you know, talk about what I can. Because I definitely want to reread The Long Halloween again and just sit and just take it all in. Because there were definitely things I missed. You know, whether it's dialogue or the artwork, you know, because that's another thing. I want to just look at the artwork and see the little details that the artist put in and enjoy it that way.
Yeah, I do think it's worth a reread, and yeah, certainly if you like that, I mean, you know, read Dark Victory, because it's, you know, it's another 13 issue series by that team, and then they also did Catwoman When in Rome, which is a 6-parter. And they had done some Legends of the Dark Knight Halloween specials before the Long Halloween. So, like, their whole Long Halloween saga is actually it spans more than you might initially think.
Yeah, I know the guys also brought that up too, you know, the other books that went along with it. So, you know, I may look into it along with everything else.
Yes. Well, listen, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? Anything that we didn't get to that you wanted to chat about?
No, I don't think so. That covered quite the expanse of time, I think.
Good. All right. Well, listen, it was great catching up. I'm really glad that we were able to do this, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Thank you for having me. I definitely enjoyed catching up with you and getting to talk about everything.
Good. And again, congratulations on the upcoming wedding. I'm so excited, so happy for you guys, and happy, you know, looking forward to being there. And yeah, hopefully we can, you know, all get together before then.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
No, of course. So thank you, Caralyn. Thank you to our listeners. We will be back next month with the return of Steve Ryan, the final worker at Alternate Realities. So yeah, make sure that you come back for that in 1 month. And as always, don't be a flat squirrel. My Comic Shop History is a Flat Squirrel production. Art by Philtastic Filmenza, music by Basic Printer. If you like what you heard, be sure to listen to Digging for Kryptonite. Sign up for exclusive content at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato and watch My Comic Shop Country on Amazon, Apple TV, and CuriosityStream.